The next step is, how do you turn that into something you can take action on tomorrow? And in fact, one of the kind of the key phrases we use at the Forge Leader is the Forge Leader knows who they are and what they have to do next, right? It's that kind of that dichotomy. There's this, and then there's all the stuff I got to do. So strategy kind of leads you into the tactics. These are the things that we need to do to be successful and to execute on our why. So once you've got those two things in place, and those two are the most important, and that's where we do spend a lot of time with clients, you come to the third one, which is people. And so it's basically, I know why I exist. I know kind of the direction I'm going in. Well, who am I going to bring around that, right? And it's much easier to determine the kinds of people, their strengths and weaknesses, their behavioral styles. There's all sorts of different kind of tools and frameworks you can use based on why we exist and where we're going. So that's where the third trail marker, people, and that's why we shifted people into the third trail marker, because that makes sense, right? It's a bit silly to bring people around when you don't know, have I got the right people? And this came out of that. There's this kind of real generic saying all the time. I got to have the right people in the right seats on the bus. Right? We hear it all the time. Well, my favorite question ever, the coach, my favorite question is, what kind of bus are you driving? And so that's going to determine how many seats we have. Are they comfortable? Are we going on a long distance drive, or are we just a little school bus? Or maybe it's I don't know. But the whole point is that we need those two fundamentals in place before we start bringing people around, and then that plays into how we recruit, how we connect, all those sorts of things. So now I've got people. I've got the right people doing the right things, but there's a piece that's still missing, and that is, how do we communicate? Now, communication, most people might think of marketing, they might think of promotion, they might think of the marketplace, like how do I communicate my business? Now, funny enough, with my background in marketing, it kind of makes sense. But one of the things we say here is, okay, we know why we exist, we know where we're going, we've got the people, now we've got to connect and communicate all of that to our team first, to our vendors, and the people and suppliers and so forth, and of course our clients. And so creating these ways we communicate, creating communication channels. One of the things we would do, I did a lot of work in media. My master's is in advertising and public relations, so we did a lot of work in that space, and we developed these things called media matrices, where we'd say, okay, we have all these different kinds of media, and here's how we're going to use them, right? And all the messages and so forth. And so that's one of the things we do in this section, is we actually create a media matrix for clients so they know how to communicate with their own team. That includes, some of their cadences and rhythms as well. But then that, of course, then segues into repeatable processes. And the fundamental question that we're asking in repeatable processes is, what are the repeatable outcomes that I need to get? And so in those repeatable outcomes, we're getting, it's all results driven. And so it's one of my highest core values is getting results, even though, I've got 5 core values personally, and so getting results is really important to me, because at the end of the day, if stuff isn't done right, it's not done. And so the whole idea of repeatable processes is this idea that I can create frameworks, I can create processes so I can keep getting the same outcomes. But it's not just about being satisfied. It's not just a process, okay, standard operating procedure. It's more about, okay, this is why we exist. This is what's going on in this space. This is the strategy. This is the direction. These are the people. This is how we're communicating. And this is how we're going to do it in a repeatable way, and processed and frameworked out. And so couple of the things that we set very early in terms of repeatable outcomes is the cadences that we hold ourselves accountable. That's a repeatable process, right? The way we do things. I'm not just talking about like a manufacturing process here. I'm really talking about how the business comes together. How do we meet? When do we meet? What do we do in those meetings? What are the different things we have to do? How often do we communicate to the team about our values? How do we go through that process? And so different kind of repeatable processes. But as I said, it's really about how do we get consistent, repeatable outcomes. And then the other piece is the frameworks for operating procedures and so forth, they fall into that as well, because everything, why we exist plays out in how consistently we do what we do. And so that's the fifth one. So it's really interesting when you look at this in the context of a trail, right? If you go to a trail, an average trailhead, say in a national park, what you'll have at the beginning of the trail is like a sign that shows you the whole trail, and it'll say, okay, if you want to go to this peak, you got to follow blue blazes, like a blue mark painted on a tree, or it might be on a stake or something like that, like a little blue tag, for example. And so what I do is I set off, okay, I know the trail starts here. I've got the board. So that's purpose.